Welcome to the Published Author Podcast, where we help entrepreneurs learn how to write a book and leverage it to grow their business and make an impact. I'm your host, Josh Steimle. Hey, I normally don't do an intro before these podcast episodes, but today, due to audio quality issues and such, and our guest's her admittedly strong Chinese accent, you might struggle a bit to understand the audio version of this. And so if you go over to YouTube and you do a search for Published Author Podcast, you'll find our channel, and there you can watch the video with captions, which will make it a little bit easier for you to understand everything that's going back and forth in this interview. So head on over to YouTube, search for Published Author Podcast to watch this with captions, and hope you enjoy the show with our amazing guest, Xinran. Also, while you're over on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button to be notified whenever we launch new podcast episodes over there. Today, my guest is Xinran. Xinran was born in Beijing in 1958. She is the author of several books, including Miss Chopsticks, Message from an Unknown Chinese Mother, and her latest, The Promise. Her first book, The Good Women of China, published in 2002, sold in over 30 languages and became an international bestseller. Her charity, The Mother's Bridge of Love, was founded to help disadvantaged Chinese children and to build a bridge of understanding between the West and China. Xinran, welcome to the show.
你好, thank you.
Thank you so much for spending time with us here today. So, before we get into the books, we'd love to learn a bit about your background and upbringing. I was reading in your bio that you grew up during a lot of upheaval in China, and it said that you were born into a wealthy family, and your first memory was of your house being burned down when you were 6 years old by the government that was kind of shaken up and shaking up the country at that time. Can you take us back to your childhood and what it was like growing up and how that shaped you into the person you are today?
Thank you. Yeah. As you just introduced, I was born 1958 and only 30 days old. I was assigned to my parents in both sides. So I've been travel, delivered between Nanjing and Beijing all the time. So my first memory about my mom when I was 5 years old and at railway station. And later on, by 7.5, I was sent back to my parents for education in the military base nearby Beijing. And by that time, I remember only 3 weeks later when I arrived there. And one day, about 3:30, after my primary school, and on the way back to the home, I saw a very big smoke. That everybody said that must be, direction is your house, your parents' house. So when I arrived, and I thought a big fire in front of the house. My father was fostered by the Red Guards, and all the furniture, books, all the stuff, including my drawers, books, was in the fire. At that time, I didn't have any memory or feeling with my parents or that home at all, because only 3 weeks with them, or even I called the parents, dad and mom, 3 weeks time. But more I care about my books and my toys. So when I saw my little girl was in the fire, I tried to rescue it. Then one red guard ran to me and held my hair with the big scissors and cut my beautiful hair with a very nice silk on that. So that was my memory. Before that, I grew up in a very wealthy family, both parents from mother's side and the father's side. Say that day, and my life is upside down. So after that, about 6.5 years, I was lived in a political children like a prison, and 14 of us guarded by the Red Guards without any parents and families. The daytime, our life just between the dormitory and the school, and sometimes the food hall And in the night, we all lie in the one room on the ground with this dry grass mattress. And that's 6.5 years. I didn't have any rights to play with other children or to talk to each other, and didn't get any help from any people. And the most scary thing was in the night.
Did you have any contact with your parents during this time?
No way. No way. And we all been told we are black children, our parents in prison, or someone just very crude to say, you're dead, you're orphans already. And also every night they come to us and pick up one child, each next door, almost every single night. That was very hard, 6.5 years. So never really come out from that 6.5 years. So until now, in the night, without my husband, my late husband passed away in 2017. I have to put a lot of the belongings like books, pens, or something around my bed, and to remind me when I wake up from this kind of nightmare or something, and remind me I'm not that little girl anymore. I'm grown up. I'm in England, or I'm in somewhere, or what I'm doing. So normally it took me about a few minutes to come out from this kind of scaring.
Wow. So even all these years later, it's still so fresh and impactful on you. So
Yeah.
for those who aren't familiar with that era in Chinese history, explain to us, why were these people burning down your house? Why were they putting you in this prison for children? Why would they do this?
This is that called the history called that culture revolution, and between 1960 to 1976, 66 to 1976. So because my parents, during the culture revolution, four kinds of people being punished. One is highly educated. That means you come from wealth family, because that time 95% of Chinese were uneducated peasants. Very, very few people being educated. And my parents both speak more than 3 foreign languages as well. And the second one is the family or your family background. Anyone worked with a cashier women down before 1949, and you could be the spy, and anyone worked with a British or American or overseas relatives. And my grandfather used to work with a British GEC company, and also my uncles, they're in the state from the 1990s, 1940s, and all kind of the background. And we call it 牛鬼蛇神. That means you are a ghost or you are bad people, or whatever, you have to be punished. So that is the reason. My family almost got all. So
Wow.
my father was, my parents were in the political labor campaign, or you say the political reason, almost 10 years.
Wow. So what happened after you were in this institution for children? How did you get out of there? What was the next step after that?
Actually, it's not any chance. It was my health went down, and I went to the hospital. I was sent to the hospital. So I survived about 4 years in the hospital. Then afterwards, during that time, I read a lot. So by 1977, and China, the first year, rebuilt the education system and started the university exam. So I took the chance and started my education in different
Okay.
places.
So you got into university, and then take us forward from there. You went to university, you studied, and then what?
Yeah, I studied international relationship and some part of English. Unfortunately, my English is very, I think it's the last one in the classroom. And yeah.
Okay. So after you graduated from university, what happened in between that, and then you have ended up getting onto the radio station, but what was the path in between those times?
Actually, after university, I was kept in a university and worked there almost 12 years. And partly it's some daily work, and partly it's like journalists and interviews, writing, and yeah, so traveling quite a lot. So until 1988, when China very first time start this kind of release the central government controlled media, because before that each province only one radio or television center and each city only one. So in China, it's 35 province, and then it's the capital city had this kind of system, and the small town or city, they didn't have this kind of radio or television. That time is no television or telephone either. So when the central government started this kind of process, and it was very difficult for the government to choose well-educated people to run the radio online, live one, because before that, the radio station is a huge body, because any published articles or pronounced or broadcast articles, they have to pass 5 censorship. Yeah, from interview topic, editing, check, recording, and finally. Yeah, and then when they after record, they have to censor again and make sure nothing wrong. So by 1988, the government want to try a live one, but it was very difficult for us because no one knew how to do it. At that time, such a big taboo. And when I tried to start my radio show, and the first training, I got a long list about what I can't do. And many things I can't mention, include Christmas, Easter, and all the foreign mediums or religions, or even name of the China founders. It's quite a lot. So we had a long time training for that. So we have to remember that. And also when I started my program, was quite scared, because if you say anything wrong, you could be arrested, and they can treat you as a criminal. So this is why they decided my program start from 10 o'clock at night, because they believe that time most of the people, they're peasants, they went to the bed. So no one would listen to my program. So we start in the safe way. So from 10 o'clock to the midnight. Surprisingly, only about 2-3 weeks, I got more than 100 letters every single day. So I was really surprised how many people really listen to my
Maybe they were
program.
mistaken. Maybe people were working during the day and had time to listen at night, it sounds like.
They had no idea. I remember the first letter come to me, because I didn't have any right. I could talk freely. So I only play some music and read a few books. And only last minutes, I would talk about my personal life. I still remember the first day I talked about my little boy. He was only, less than 1 year old. So I talk about how wonderful being a mother and to the boy. And the letter coming, they said, how dare you say the love? This is a capitalism word. And someone even sent a bullet, the knife to me. Say, you must change your voices. Your voice is too soft. It's not a revolution voice. And then you are
Wow.
copied, copy ABC and the BBC in the wrong way. And anyway, I wasn't very popular that time. It took me almost like more than half a year. People realize what I talk about is daily life or love between the family members, and it's not bad things. We all need love from the baby, loved by parents, and children loved by the schools, and between the married couples or being grandparents, you have a right to be loved and cared according to Chinese culture or according to human being.
Now, this radio show is being broadcast how far? Was it just within the city where you were, or was it going further?
Now that radio, actually, I worked about 3 radio stations, but before 2003 wasn't, allowed to talk about. But it's a very big one. Actually, this radio station was in Zhengzhou. It's about belong to CCTV, the central government control. And in 1950s, they used this channel to send out this disturbing zzz to all Asia, to stop people to listen to ABC and the BBC. So by 1988, they turned this channel, which is a very big and covered almost whole Asia, and turned to that culture channel. This is why when I started, all the journalists and the radio talk show or presenters are being selected from 40,000 people. They only choose 7 women and 7 men.
Wow, because this was being broadcast literally to millions of people, tens of millions.
Yeah, more than that, possibly. And later on, I remember I got just hundreds letters every day. So because something happened to my audience when I did read series about the letters, I thought it just me, but in fact, more and more letters sent to me is for asking for help. So until one girl, she was 19, she wrote to me, said, Xinran, I become a bad girl because the schoolboy touched me in the street. So all of my village said I was dirty. And then my parents asked me to buy. And I didn't think I did anything wrong. It's not my fault. Do you tell me, help me? If you couldn't care about me, I have to die. And I didn't get the letter. And later on, her parents come to radio station and shouted at me, say, I'm a murderer because their daughter committed suicide. So that really shocked me. It's like a big lesson. So I realized the letter is not just fun or something. It's quite serious. The message from unknown society or hidden voices. So since then, I started inviting more than 10 university students every single day to open a letter for me. So we divide the letter in the 3 different parts. One part is just a nice greeting, and one part is need help. Another part is I think they crossed the law, and we should give to policemen to help them. So yeah, that letter is quite a lot every single day.
Wow. And these letters, and then also the calls that you had coming in, these influenced your books. These became parts of your books later on, right?
Yeah. And actually, if you read all of my 8 or 9 books, I've been written and published, and all of the story, 99%, are not my life story, except in the group China that include my childhood or my mom's story. It's all the people's story I've interviewed, because since 1988, I started this radio show, and I realized that the real China, I didn't know by that time. I thought I'd been highly educated. I'm a Chinese mother. That time I'm a Chinese daughter. And then when I start my journey, interview people, actually just outside of Zhengzhou, 40 minutes driving from Zhengzhou, the capital of the Henan. I thought a village. I was really shocked to saw the people's life, how poor, and even the girls and the boys, they don't have trousers in the summer. So I realized something I didn't know about my country. When I started interview about the modern history from 1911, and when the time and our last emperor, I found so many history the older generation talk I didn't know. It wasn't in my textbooks, it wasn't in books I reading, and never had people talk about this. Even I asked my colleagues, I said, do you know this? And in the countryside, very poor. I remember my colleagues, they just divided two parts. One part said, oh, come on, don't be silly, always there. We come from that. Another side, a very small group said, are you sure you saw the same thing and it's by yourself? And I was very surprised because we worked in the same radio station. We never talk about this. Just whole the country and at least I think 3 generations was in silence about the real history and the real China by that time. Yeah.
So do you remember the spark when you said, I need to write a book about this? Was this something you had thought about for a long time? You talked about how you loved reading when you were younger. Had you always wanted to write a book, or what was that spark that made you say, I need to write a book about this?
Well, yeah, I had a dream when I was a little girl. I had, I said, particularly in the political children person lie down there, and I was so scared. I would thought what I want to be and why, I thought it was the first one. I want to write something as a writer, and so I can tell people my story because I didn't have a right to talk to anyone. And secondly, I like to be generous because when I stay with my grandparents, I heard my grandmom listen to the radio all the time. And then I want to be the lawyer because my grandmom read the book, say, if you have trouble, you go to the lawyer. And I want to be diplomat because my grandfather used to work with the GEC in a British company and come to UK. So I thought, wow, you can travel all the time. But obviously, during my grow up, I never had a chance until 1988 when this central government announced that they want to, select people from whole China. Everybody can apply as a journalist. So I took the chance. I gave up my very good job and I moved to the radio station and as a journalist. But I never dreamed to write a book. I wrote quite a lot of articles for Chinese magazines, for Women magazine, Young People magazine, or talk about technologically the social problem since 1989. And but I never thought I could write a book until I moved to UK. 1997, I moved to UK. And after 2 months, I worked like a cleaner because I didn't have enough language or didn't have any friends to ask for help. So I worked very hard as a cleaner to get any chance to get myself back. Finally, I got a chance to have like a part-time teacher in SOAS, a School of Asia and African Study. Then part of my teaching there is for Foreign Office and Western media, include Financial Times, The Guardian, or Independent, and the Times, and also include lots of the companies, what they are going to set up a business in China. So during this kind of lesson, all of my students said, oh, why don't you write a book? Because every lesson you told us some nice story of your culture, your interview and your friends. So that was the start. Yeah, I started my first book writing.
And the first book was The Good Women of China. Is that right?
Yes, and actually that book, when I finished, was 30 stories. So when I sent it to the publisher, they love it, but they thought it too heavy and too much, so they cut half.
Oh, they cut half of it out. So that was published in 2002. Yeah. And did you have any anticipation of how popular it would become? Or was it a surprise to you?
Yes, I didn't know. Yes, only half, I think in 6 or 8 months, I got the book being published almost like over 20 languages. So by a few years ago, now this book in 49 languages as well.
Wow, 49 languages now.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And so after that, did you already have ideas for your next books? Did you want to put the interviews they cut into the next books, or where did you go from that first book?
Because that book was cut half, once of the story cut it, I always want to write, always, because that woman influenced my life a lot. It's Sky Burial. So because I interviewed this woman in 1995, and when audience called me, say, oh, we found someone come from Tibet. We never heard any Tibet story from Tibet. Would you like to interview her? So for me, I was very naive at the time. I had no knowledge, and I traveled to Tibet a few times just for the culture things. I never really stay with the Tibetan family or doing something. So when I met this woman in the tea house in Suzhou, she was waiting for me outside of the tea house. Her body was big, smelly, very big, smelly. It's like, you're in Tibet, people drink yak milk, eat, wear yak skin. It's, everything is about yak. So their smell, the body is full of this.
Everybody smells like yak.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I don't know. Anyway, when we sit down in the tea house, just a very few minutes, all of the tea house empty. People left. So it must be that reason as well. So that night, we shared a tiny room in a hotel because I realized she could tell me quite a lot of story. And because I didn't have much knowledge about what she's talking about. And I only found it fascinating about the love story. She could spend more than 34 years in Tibet for her missing husband, how she survived. So I was very naive, asked her, say, how could you last 34 years? Then she looked at me with a very sharp eyes. Say, for me, I never thought that long. For me, it's every single tomorrow. Also true. Really got me was before we went to bed. And unfortunately, this part was cut off from the edit. And when we before went to bed, she wear the bigger robe, Tibetan robe, looks very square. So I thought she's quite strong. Then when she opened, and she took maps, knife, herbs, this or that, and her body becomes smaller, smaller, smaller. Actually, this Tibetan rug is her luggage. Then she lie down, she put everything, then wrap herself, then sleep. And this immediately helped me to realize when I was in Tibet, I saw lots of people walk to Lhasa and they pray and without any luggage. We used to surprised by that. I realized. So she told me her story, but the most things that she really, really taught me or influenced in my life was when I asked her, I said, you come back now. You lost their parents, you lost their sisters, you don't have anyone to your hometown. You regret? Then she said, no. I learned the big things in Tibet with the Tibetan family. She said, be angry, regret, the moody, hate is about past, but your life is for tomorrow. But you shouldn't waste your tomorrow and pay off the past. So before met her, I was very moody because I come from this kind of culture, revolution, childhood. She gave me a big lesson. So after that, I spent another 9.5 years figure out what she told me in Tibet. So this is Sky Burial.
That became Sky Burial.
Very proud of it. Good. Yeah, and also being selected by the Penguin Classic as well.
Wow. Now you also have a children's book that you wrote. It's there on the shelf behind you, Mother Bridge of Love. And this is also the name of the charity that you funded. Can you tell us a little bit about the children's book and about the charity and why you started that?
Okay, this book is called Mother Bridge of Love. And because my book been published around the world, mostly is more than 10 or 20 languages. So I had lots of chance, had a tour around maybe more than 25 countries. And so everywhere I've been, I realized something I never knew before is Chinese children adopted by foreign parents. Later on, we discovered and 27 countries, include Iceland, adopted nearly 160,000 Chinese children, 99% girls. Only very small percentage boys, also adopted by Spanish family, and very later after 2010. Yeah. So when I started this kind of journey, actually, the first things I was very shocked. I didn't know that. So I decided to set up the charity to help those adopted children, because no matter who they are and how old or small or which language they speak, they always ask me the same question. They, Xinran, could you tell me why my Chinese mom didn't want me? So I interviewed many Chinese mothers, gave up the children. In my other books, like Miss Chopsticks, Buy Me the Sky, or Message from Unknown Chinese Mothers. And so all of this kind of journey I knew, and this kind of, how do you say, girls, bandit girls, come from a tradition, come from a single child policy, come from some, how do you say, marriage, pregnancy without marriage. But how to help those children to understand something is, if you have a life that come from your love, your mom's love, because that means your mother is very brave, and also very love you very much, and also very bright, because they can be punished, government banded you, or they can drop you, or according to Chinese culture, they can kill you. And also keep you alive, and send it to the foreigners or send it to other people to adopt it. That means they really love you. They take a risk to keep your life. So it was very difficult to help adopted children to feel where is their birth mother. So I was sent the poem, a beautiful poem about two mothers love one child. But I want to have some image of the children, because they come from different language. They've been adopted for 27 countries. So Barefoot, a children publisher, come to me. They bring the idea, say, we can make a book, to help children to understand that. how to explain the two mothers, we didn't have the idea. So we sent out a message around the world to select the artists who can help. So one day I got this picture. Then this artist explained, say, birth mother we never met, but they're in our life as a, as a sky, as breathe, as everything, every single day, every second with you. So when I saw this picture, I was cried. I saw the picture was in the restaurant in the meeting. When I opened that, I really cried. This is what exactly we wanted. So we made this book, The Bridge of the Love, with the Barefoot publisher. And so this book in 2006, when they published, it immediately jumped to the bestseller by the Washington Post newspaper. Until now, still many adoptive family have this book.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and it is so meaningful. And for the listeners, I have a personal connection to this because my wife and I, we adopted a daughter from China 2 years ago who's now 15 years old. And so this is very personal for us. And I'm so thankful that you've created that book and these other books. When I read a message from an unknown Chinese mother, that was so touching for me because I want to understand where my daughter came from as well. And so it wasn't just, I mean, I hope she reads it someday and I hope she can feel like, okay, maybe this is the story of my birth mother in China. But for me too, it was, well, I want to know who her birth mother was. I want to know what those circumstances were as her adoptive parent here in the West. And so that book has been so helpful for me to say, well, maybe this is how things happened for our daughter. Maybe this is her history. Of course, we don't know exactly what it is, but it's nice to be able to imagine that she had a birth mother in China who loved her, who was brave, and who said, my daughter needs something that I can't provide. And so I'm going to, quote unquote, I don't like using the word abandon. I feel like that's not an accurate term, but that she tried to give her something more that she wasn't able to give her for whatever reason.
That's true. That's true. The one story I didn't put it in was before that book. And my husband, my English husband, we went back China. Normally, I went back twice a year and update my knowledge about fast change China. And so we always went to the countryside to see the difference between the city and the countryside. I'm sure you and many friends in China, you can see the huge difference. And so I remember one lady, and when she saw my husband, she come to me and say, you know foreigners? I said, yes. And she said, have you been foreigner, other country? I said, yes. And she said, have you seen any big nose hold our Chinese child? At the very beginning, I didn't understand what's the big nose. So then she pointed at my husband, and then she said, oh, our poor children must be very scared. You know, their face is very different from our face. When you hold a baby, they must cry quite a lot. I said, oh, possibly, makes sense. Then she tell those big nose mother, when they hold our Chinese baby, use the left arm. Because no matter what kind of language or what kind of face you are, the heart, mom's heart, pump in the same way. The baby will come. When I heard this, I was like, tears pouring down. And never thought about this. And so I guess this mother must be one of this kind of mother, and gave up their baby and for the better life. And also when I interviewed so many Chinese women, even they never been educated. And I can feel the pain, their heart, in their heart. It's like a big hole every single day, remind them. And also I can see because China now is much better life. living condition improved quite a lot, and the conversation quite a lot, and the people's social media, this kind of information is turning around. So many people had more knowledge about this kind of adoption or foreigners or adopted children. So I think that the things for China society, but also for many parents who lost their babies, there must be a struggle as well.
Right. That's a kind of pain that never goes away. That's such a hard thing. So
Yeah, even we have a computer or mobile phone, the one day you're missing or you're lost, you're get regret or annoyed for a few days. That is the baby mom carried in the tummy a month. It's
yes.
the real life.
I'm trying to hold it together here as you're talking because this strikes so deep to our family too. So you care a lot about these orphans in China and the families, the birth mothers, the adoptive families. So you started Mother Bridge of Love. Tell us a little bit about the charity and what it does.
Oh yeah, we started this charity from 2004, and so after we struggled the first 10 years how to help um, poor children in the countryside, and how to help adoptive children, how to help overseas Chinese. Then we realized that lots of information in the adoption family is not true. Almost nearly 80% was fake, because by different reasons. Some is by the lack of education, some is just human trafficking possibly, and some is local corruption. Okay? So we try to figure out what's the best way to help them. And also the countryside, the children's birth town or birth village could be punished, how do you say, helped by us. Yeah. So we set up the program called the Book for Kids. So Book for Kids is based on 3 steps. First step, when the family send the information to us, we do the research. For example, some family said, oh, my children from Sichuan, is that true? So we'll send the volunteer to search in this local area. When we got some information, but wasn't very sure, so we started this kind of countryside libraries. So we send the books to the village school to help them build up the library and stationery and sport items, so the children could have something, to learn, to read, to play. Then at the same time, we send out the information to the school, to the village, say, have you heard anything about lost daughters or children missing? And if we confirm something with us, then later on we'll report to the adoptive family or this country society. Then we can arrange some certain trip to visit the village, or to have this contacts bridge them together, and to see any chance to help them find birth parents or similar information. Because we found in China, and this orphanages, they send the children from the same orphanage to different countries. So sometimes the sisters, the siblings, send out to different countries. So that is quite serious. So during this program, until last month, we have built up 27 village libraries, village school libraries. So that means in 27 areas, we're doing this already. So during this project, we can, help adoptees, adoptive family to get this kind of thing, to help each other, to share information, and particularly have the children who are coming to the teenage. When they start dating, when they have a friends, when they have a marriage, very sharp question they have to face. Where you come from? Why you are looked very different from parents? Why you don't have the information from your birth family? And what's your culture, root culture is? And also, this is why my charity recently, we are worried about this kind of anti-Asia situation. That could bring the damage to the adopted family as well. So that is we are trying to do, and also we try to help young students, particularly adopted children with a family, to visit China. So we send a volunteer to accompany with them to see what is real China, not just in the Western media, but not just in the people's gossip, not just in the poor village, not just in Shanghai. It's different between the China. So that is our charity today.
That's fantastic. So let's skip forward to your latest book, The Promise. Now, with Sky Burial and The Promise, online I saw these described as novels, but I'm reading The Promise right now, and it sounds like nonfiction. Is it partly fiction, partly nonfiction, or is it all nonfiction, or what's the story behind The Promise?
Actually, to be honest, all of my books is nonfiction. I found this very interesting. Sometimes the editor is quite scared, and they have some self-censored and about religion or about culture. So they much prefer, if the label said this is a fiction. I very clear tell you this is a nonfiction. And how do you say, before the Promise was a big project in my life. I spent more than 25 years to follow the group of the Chinese elders in last 2-3 generations. So I interviewed them and followed them in more than 25 years. So that was a big project. The end of that project was the book, China Witness. China Witness now, I believe I was told, is the reference book by over 200 universities. So in that book, it's quite a lot of Chinese history. But during the process of that book, so I discovered something very interesting is in eldest generation, grandparents' generation, they hardly to tell what's happened to them or their parents, to their own children. So the conversation between the generation in the one family is cut off, one thing. So I got lots of films. You can see when you mentioned, have you told your children about your childhood? And then 99% they said, no, that's very difficult to tell. I'm scared to tell, or someone said, I don't want to say anything. So that one. So for family young generation, they don't have very much chance to understand what's going on in their roots or grandparent life. Secondly, because China after 1980s changed so much in last 40 years. In the West country, you spend more than 250 years from religion controlled state to the democracy. In China, after the Cultural Revolution until now, it's only less than 50 years. So China just jumped from a very, very poor country. When I was little, we spent hours in queue for a piece of tofu. And the family cooking oil, only half kilo for a whole month. Now China is like a big brother. Economic so strong. We started buying street in Paris, in America, in London, everywhere. So how much change in China between generations? I think that is scared lots of parents to have the conversation with their children. And also for children, young children, they don't have a chance from history books, from class, from social media, from anything to know what's really happened before. Cultural Revolution in China and the 100 Years History book, published in 2016. The 10 Years Cultural Revolution, only half page. So how could young people to understand what's going on. When they talk about Korea War, everybody knows in China it's the war with America. They didn't realize it was with the 16 countries come from United Nations. All of this kind of historical fact, we didn't have that. So lots of people complain, the young people don't care about history, don't care about country. But for me, I always believe we have to understand why this happened. Okay, and other things is like I wrote an idea for the promise. They don't understand where the parents come from. They don't understand, parents' marriage, political marriage, and also history and traditional. Like my age, we didn't have this kind of knowledge. You have sexual relations before your marriage. Come to my son's generation. If you don't have the boyfriend or girlfriend, everybody look down on you. Even your parents also you say, why don't you have a girlfriend or boyfriend? So you can see this kind of life change, not just big shock. It's a very big challenge. It's a twist to China society. So in the promise, it's 4 generations from one family. You can see how much different already. The grandparents, they arranged marriage. They didn't know the dating. Everything is after they're married. And their parents is come from political. They come to themselves when I try to interview them. They have no idea. It's in my age. When you ask their children, they're just online dating, or they can marry in the morning and divorce in the afternoon. So in the whole China, it's kind of changing. And I think we should pay attention to understand that. One is for understanding between generation and respect. And another one is we have to understand what is good things for future, what we should avoid from the future as well. So that is my latest book, Promise. Yeah.
And so this book and your other books, they're really creating a bridge between the generations, between the modern generation and between the generation from a few years ago, so that they can understand each other.
Yeah, and also I really want to young Chinese or foreigners, the readers, to understand that when you see the problem in China, at the moment when people talking about China, they feel that something is great, high-speed trains, huge cities, everything, modern technology. Another side you see, poor countryside, or people living in such a, in the traditional way, how the country manage it together. Why in the same family have such a very different attitude to the daily life? So people always feel that China is like Picasso's face. Picasso has a famous painting about a face. You have a nose, eyes, ears, everything not in the right position. So China at the moment looks like that. But if you know how much we changed in this 40 years, you would understand that. And also very important is understanding between the generation, between different cultures, different religions, different people, different generation, is the basic bridge for the peace, and for the civilization, and for the development in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
Are your books allowed in China?
Well, my first book, when I published, and in 2003, and then only 3 months, and they sold 24,000, and then was the Communist Party Congress, so the Communist Party, the conference, so they printed 50 books, include that one, because we talk about culture revolution. And this book being published in Taiwan. Funny enough, and after half a year in Taiwan stopped as well, because Taiwan gave me big interview on the front page, talk about cultural revolution. And many Taiwan people mentioned, we have a similar situation in 1950s, 60s, when Chiang Kai-shek come to Taiwan. is they call the white, the scared time. Yeah, it's so cool. So there's similar reason they didn't want to open that conversation, and Taiwan stopped as well. No other books, no, not yet. I wish all of my books could be published in China, because I believe all of my interviews come from their real life. Even they're being hidden, they're being forgotten, but we shouldn't forget them.
What I'm really getting from a lot of your books and what you're saying, Xinran, is that it's really about fostering connection, isn't it? It's connection between generations. It's connections between parents and children who have been separated for one reason or another. It's about connecting all these different groups together in a way that leads to peace and understanding and cooperation, rather than conflict and misunderstanding and the suffering that comes from that. This has been such an enlightening discussion. I'm so glad that we were able to have this chat. And we're going to include your website for Mother Bridge of Love. We'll include that website link in the show notes so that people can go find that charity and learn more about it. And of course, we can find your books on Amazon. And is there anywhere else that people can connect with you or learn more about you?
Well, as you just mentioned, thank you very much. People can discover from YouTube a lot, because I've been lectured and taught around the world and in different languages. And also Amazon books, very good. And in more than 20, 40 languages. And yeah, the website of MBL. But the website at the moment, we are in the improvements. So we are working on that, because after 15 years, we need updated, and we want to bring them more online events for adoptive family. So we have to be very careful according to the legal and protection and privacy and confidential. So how to set up this kind of program with adoptive family, with adoptees, to help them to answer the question, to help them search in the future journey to China. So I think this new website will be ready by at least by June or July. Yeah, so you definitely can find the contacts with me and with our team. Our people email you or call you, you can pass on to me as our volunteers. Thank you.
Great. I want to be sensitive to your time. We're just a few minutes past the hour now. Do you have time for one more question, just a few more minutes, or do you have an appointment you need to get to?
No, up to you. Yeah.
So our final question here is, if you were giving advice to aspiring authors out there who have never written a book before, but they have these ideas, they have stories, they have experiences, maybe their own experiences, maybe other people's experiences, what are some of the tips, or what's the biggest tip that you might give to an aspiring author who looks at your body of work and says, I want to create something like that, I want to write a book like that? How would you advise them to get started?
Well, from my personal experience, most difficult for me is not what I want to write. It's what I want to represent, the interviews and personalities and the characters, the language skills, all the stories, emotions, loves. So I spend lots of time to think, because when I heard this person, and it's like a film quite a lot, and how to put them into the sentence. So that's very difficult. So for me, I was spending lots of time to filming what I want to write in my head. So that's the first thing I would do. And secondly, I believe everybody can be a writer, because a writer is not academic. I write my book, it's not from my brain, it's from my heart. And because when you feel something, you want to tell people, I believe everybody, has this kind of emotion. Sometimes why you tears, and why you hate, why you jump and so happy, why you are so moody. When you have that kind of feeling, don't put the paper or pen or whatever, you record it. Now you have a mobile phone, okay? Don't try to think about beautiful words. What exactly what you're feeling in that moment. You talk to your phone, record it. When you record it, then you can turn your voice into the text. Then you edit that. So that kind of recording, very fresh. That is who you are. No one the same style as you. I think very important. We don't want to be the same as others. Yeah, you want to keep who you are. You want people know who you are and what you are. So that for me, I always suggest people, even the very young children or very elders. My mother-in-law called Mary Wesley. She published her first book when she was 70. And she published 11 books, become a bestseller or top writer in the world. When I asked her, after 70, how could you write so many books come out? She said, I feel all those people, their image pictured in my mind. That is, I feel the same things. So this is why I believe we can write little things, we can write big things. For example, you just had a cup of tea. So the teacups, the tea, your body, your language, your fingers, all can represent some kind of wonderful stories. I believe so. So that is my second point. My last point I would say is I don't like to use adjective and adverb. I like to use a verb because a verb can represent understanding everything between different cultures. Because if you use too much adjective or adverb, you get lost the meaning. For example, this person very angry. Then you can observe woman's angry and man's angry different. Man's angry is more like in neck and head or hands like this. And the girl's angry is not. Girl's angry is more, details. The body language can represent the better writing, I believe. Sorry about my Chinglish. Yeah.
Oh, that is terrific advice. Well, thank you so much, Xinran, for being with us here today on the Published Author Podcast. We appreciate it so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for the advice and for the stories you've told us here today.
Thank you for having me, and 谢谢大家.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to spread the word, please give us a 5-star rating review and tell your friends to subscribe too. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts. And if you're an entrepreneur interested in writing and publishing a nonfiction book to grow your business and make an impact, visit publishedauthor.com for show notes for this podcast and other free resources.